I want to talk about how we calculate and how we use percent increase and decrease. So imagine an item in a grocery store costs $5. Okay? This first set says the value doesn't change. Write an equation to find out how much the item costs in a year. Well, if the item doesn't change, I hope you can just think, well, obviously it still costs $5. But I want to write an equation for this. So you say, well, it costs $5 now. To keep the cost the same, I multiply by 1. Okay? Because that's the way we get something to maintain its value. Multiply by 1. Now, the next thing says the item's value increases 4%. Write an equation to find out how much it costs in 1 year. Now, first of all, we need to take our percentage and we need to convert that to a decimal. So the way we do that is we take our percent and divide it by 100 because, of course, 100% is all of it. So we basically are figuring, well, what proportion of 100% are we talking about? So you always take your percent and divide by 100. So that's what we're talking about, 0.04. That's the increase. Now, we had this $5 item, and we know that multiplying by 1 would have kept its value the same, but we didn't do that. We increased it by 0.04. So we still had that 1 that would have maintained it, but then we have to add the increase. So, of course, 1 plus 0.04 is 1.04, like that. That's our equation that would figure out how much it costs in 1 year. Now, the next question is the item's value decreases by 4%. Now, I spelled decrease wrong. There we go. Decreases 4%. Now, this is almost exactly the same as what we just did. The difference is we had this $5 item. Remembering, multiplying by 1 would have left it the same, but it went down 0.04. So 1 minus 0.04 is 0.96. So everything always begins with this idea of a 1. A 1 would have maintained its value exactly. Everything goes up or down from that. So if it were a 7% interest instead of 4, we would add 1 plus 0.07. If it was a 12% decrease, we would do 1 minus 0.12 to figure that out. So we've got to read carefully. Is it going up from 1 or is it going down from 1? But that's all we have to do is base it on 1 would have left the value the same, and we're going up or down from there. Now, an automobile depreciates or loses its value as it gets older. Suppose that a particular model loses 20% of its value each year. Write a recursive formula to find the equation of the car when it is 6 years old if it costs $24,000 when it was new. So let's just begin with this. Let's say, okay, it is losing value. So remember, we multiply by 1 if it kept its value, but it's not. It's losing. So we're going to have a subtraction. Okay? Now, we should calculate this as a 20% divided by 100. Figure out what proportion that is. 0.2. So it's 1 minus 0.2. Now you calculate that. That's 0.8. That's what we're going to be multiplying by. Again, cars don't gain value, but if it said it was gaining, we would do 1 plus 0.2. So a recursive formula, which I've talked about in earlier videos, this is one that says we have 2 parts. We have one part that says, what did we start at? Well, in this case, it's $24,000. That was our initial value. And then we say, well, to get the next value, we take our previous, and in this case, we're going to multiply that by 0.8. Or you could even, just put the 1 minus 0.2 in here if that helps you. You could just write that instead of 0.8. And we could use our calculator to actually calculate this out to get 6 years old. But let me show you one other way we can use this idea. we're going to figure out what the percent increase or decrease was from my little table here of before and now values. Okay. Now, well, remember, we're always beginning with 1. 1 means it maintained its value. And I put this little symbol, if you haven't seen this before, this means plus or minus. It basically says, you know, if we increased, we did 1 plus a rate. If we decreased, we did 1 minus a rate. So we might have to do some solving to figure that out, but this is, you know, the way we've been calculating. Now, what we have to do is we have to figure out what the multiplier was. So basically we have to say, well, what did we multiply by to get us from 25 to 20? Well, the easiest way to figure that out is simply take the now value and divide it by the before value. Now, if you type that into your calculator, this is 0.8. So what we have to say is that what goes in this box, basically in this area, that gave us that multiplier. Now, notice it decreased. So we're basically saying, well, 1 minus what was 0.8, our multiplier. And of course, 1 minus 0.2. So this was a 0.2 subtraction, or a 20% drop in value. Okay, let's do the next one. Now you see here we had an increase. It went from 13 to 15. So now we're saying, okay, we got to calculate what was multiplied by that got us from 13 to 15. And easiest way to do it is just take the now value and divide it by the previous. And if we type that in, we get 1.15. Now I'm rounding, okay, 1.15. I'm just rounding to a couple of decimal places. So this was an increase. So we're saying, well, 1 plus what was 1.15? Again, just kind of filling this box. Like, what did we add to get that multiplier? Well, of course, we added 15.15 went in here. So that meant it was a 15% increase. I guess I should write decrease and increase here, okay, for that one. So again, if something you say, well, it went up 15%, it was $13, now it's $15. Okay, let's do this last one. We're going to take the now value and divide it by the before value. Okay, so 70 divided by 50 is 1.4. And then, again, we use our formula. We know it was an increase. 1 plus what gave us 1.4. Of course, it's 0.4. Maybe you want to have 0.40, so it looks more like we're going to make it a percentage. This is a 40% increase. So just remember, it always bases on 1. 1 plus that proportion gives us the increase. 1 minus that proportion gives us the decrease. If this video helped you, please like and subscribe for more math help.